Hello and welcome to Sex, Drugs, and Everything Else. This is your host, Alex Trust. How's everybody been doing this week? I'll tell you what, I've been doing fantastic. I thought my van broke down, but it turns out it just needed gasoline. Now, that may sound stupid, like why didn't you notice that you were out of gas, Alex? Well, because my gas meter is broken and I just put $10 in it. Well, what ended up happening was someone siphoned the gas out of my car. Now, one could suppose that I'd be pretty pissed off about that. And for a moment I was, but then I thought to myself, if that person needed that $10 worth of gas that bad, they're welcome to it. I have a theory that if you're truly giving, you can't be stolen from. If that person would have just asked me for $5 or $10 for gas, I probably would have given it to him if I had it. But he went out of his way to stick a hose into the tank of my van. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but basically what you have to do is suck on the hose until the gas comes out, and you usually get a mouthful of gasoline for your trouble. And that, my friend, is extremely unpleasant. So he had to work for his $10. What I'm really actually happy about is the fact that my car's not broken, because I do not have the money to fix it, or I wouldn't have if it had needed fixing. I just wouldn't have, and I wouldn't have had a car. So that, on top of some of the good charity work I've been able to do this week, I'm not going to go into it specifically, but I've been able to help some people out, and that always feels good. So, have any of you done anything that's of note? Have you been kind to your fellow man? Have you helped out another human being when you saw that they needed it? I hope so, 'cause that's the kind of stuff that's going to change the world. Alright, well, I'm not going to start preaching about that, but we're going to do two topics this week. And the first one is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's the power of doing something instead of nothing. And by that I mean doing something, anything, any little task, instead of doing nothing because you become overwhelmed with having too much to do. So we're going to talk about that. And then in segment 2, we're going to do a little bit of sexy talk. We're going to talk about the clit. It's one of the most misunderstood parts of the female anatomy. I didn't really know what it was until I was about 22, and that's pretty sad, because I was doing some fucking by the time I was 18, 17, and I was going down on girls, from 15, 16 on, and man, was I doing it wrong. I might have gotten lucky once in a while and hit the bean, kind of like you accidentally hit one of the balloons in the carnival game with one of the darts. But otherwise, yeah, I was never taught about it. So we're going to talk about the clit. One of my favorite parts of the female anatomy, because you can just do so much with it. Just so much. So we're going to talk about that. And then in segment 3, I have a great piece of music for you by a band called The Infinity Process, and their song Well, I haven't decided which song to go with yet because they've got a couple good ones. We're either going to go with Ego or The Farther You Fall, I think. But we'll decide by the end of the episode. And then, of course, we're going to read a chapter of Henchmen because that is one of the most demanded parts of the show, as far as I can tell. And I love reading T. O'Shea's work because he's fantastic, if I do say so myself. So, who's ready to get started? I know I am. I'm always excited. So, let's do this thing. In 3, 2, 1. Alright, welcome to segment 1 of episode 8 of Sex, Drugs, and Everything Else. Alright, this first segment is going to be about the power, and yes, it is a power, of doing something instead of nothing. Now, what I mean by this is people, especially people like my wife and I, we have problems with depression and anxiety, and a lot of times we find ourselves so depressed or anxious, especially when we know we have a lot to do that day, we have so much to accomplish, and that scares us, that puts us off, and that puts us into an even deeper depression and anxiety, which then makes it even harder to try and accomplish these overwhelming or seemingly overwhelming tasks. It's a vicious circle. Now, how can you break this vicious circle? I personally have found the power of doing something, anything, can help break this cycle. Now, it can be anything. Do your laundry, do your dishes, just tidy up the house a little bit, take your dog for a walk. If you don't have a dog, take a walk in the park by yourself or with your spouse. I don't know, nowadays with COVID, there's less places you can go, but maybe even just go out and have a cheap breakfast, something, anything. Go to a store, put a mask on, go to a store and window shop for half an hour. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but what it will do is it will help alleviate the pressure of having to do the bigger things. Now, how do you know this, you ask? Well, Alex has been around for 43 years, and he has dealt with depression and anxiety for most of those years. Even when I was 6, 7 years old, I was dealing with this problem. So I took a piece of advice from my grandfather, who was a medic in World War II. He was in France on D-Day, and he saw a lot of messed up stuff. If you've ever read the book by Somerset Maugham, The Razor's Edge, that was my grandpa. He had to put back together the most torn up, destroyed and decimated human beings that you'll ever see. The battlefield is no place for anyone, much less a sensitive soul like my grandfather was. He was an artist. He was a photographer and a writer. And he had to deal with the horrors of horror, or the horror of horrors, however you want to put it. But the advice he gave me was, just do the simplest thing you can when you get up, when you first get up. And his thing was making his bed. He learned it in the army because basically they had, in the morning after revelry, they had 5 minutes to shower and shave. They had to get ready for the day really, really quick. It was expected of them. And the first thing they all did was make their beds. And I'm not talking like, just throw the covers over real quick. I'm talking make the bed with hospital corners. It had to be perfect. You had to be able to bounce a quarter off of it. And you had to do it fast, fast, fast. But he told me that just by doing that first, by making his bed and making it perfect, it was a lot less daunting to then only have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go take a crap, take a shower, do a shave, then go out and do all the things that you do in the army. This was specifically at boot camp, and if anyone's seen any movies about war, you damn well know boot camp is pretty much a nightmare. They break you down so they can build you back up into a killing machine. Even medics were taught to kill. Everyone was expected to kill. Even, like I said, a medic that had to save lives. They still had to learn to shoot. They still had to learn how to throw a grenade. They still had to learn how to take out a enemy bunker, and incinerate the other human beings inside that bunker. And a medic not only had to learn to do all that, but he had to learn to put his compatriots back together again when the enemy did exactly what they'd been taught to do: maim and kill. So imagine that duality. Imagine the stress of knowing that that's what your day was going to consist of, especially for, like I said, a sensitive guy like my grandpa. He came back from that war an alcoholic, and he never was the same man again. According to my grandma, he was a beautiful, kind man before that war, and afterward he came back, and he was, for the next 20 years or so, a bit of an asshole. He eventually came around, turned his life around, stopped drinking, and started missionary work. He did missionary work in New York, and he did missionary work in Ireland. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is his advice is sound. You need to do just one simple little thing to get going. And I guarantee you this works because I use it all the time. I wouldn't get these podcasts done. I wouldn't get my novels written. I wouldn't get my bills paid, or any other simple task that I have to take care of in life, taking out the garbage and stuff like that. Sometimes even that's overwhelming to me, So I find the tiniest thing that I can find and I do it. I used to use the making the bed method, but my wife and I are on such different sleep schedules. Usually one of us is in the bed, so I can't exactly use that. But I find that, we have a new kitten, and I'd love for you to be able to see her, but obviously you can't on a podcast. But we've named her Certainty. because when we saw her, we were certain she was the cat for us. She's only 4 weeks old when we got her, and she's just adorable. But we call her Certs for short, kind of like the mint. Anyway, point being is, I'll wake up and I'll pick Certs up and I'll just brush her for 5 minutes. She needs to be brushed anyway. She likes it, and it gives me something to do, something to accomplish, you know? Like I said, it can be anything. If you have a dog, you take it for a walk. Or, heck, give it a bath. I don't know. That might be daunting. Dogs can be hard to bathe sometimes. But, hey, just brush your dog. I guarantee he'll like it. You know what I mean? Or just spend time with your animal. Whatever it is, dog, cat, ferret. Just spend a little time with petting it and playing with it. Why not? It's a simple thing to do. So that's pretty much it. That's the advice I have for you. It's always better to do something instead of doing nothing, no matter how daunting the task may seem. It's a power, and it's a tool. Just like everything else in life is a tool. You're going to hear me say that many, many times, so try not to get too bothered by it. But yes, it is a tool, and if you use it properly, you will prosper. If you don't use it properly, well, like most things, you're probably going to be fucked. So that is the end of segment number 1. I hope you learned something. And next, coming up, we're going to talk about something a little more exciting. I already told you what it is, so let's get ready to go, because I'm excited to talk about the clit. Alright, coming up next on sex, drugs, and everything else. Alright, welcome to segment 2 of Sex, Drugs, and Everything Else. Now it's time, brothers and sisters, to talk about the clitoris. It is the most sensitive erogenous zone due to its high concentration of nerve endings. For people with vagina, orgasms most commonly come from stimulating the clit, which is located above the vaginal opening and urethra. Stimulation of the clit can be applied directly or internally through the vagina or through stimulation of the other parts of the vulva, which is basically the outside of the vagina. Now, the trick is finding the damn thing. Until I was 22, I wasn't even sure what a clit was and where it was. I just was never taught. And, the porn I watched was, I mean, we didn't really even watch porn back then. We were lucky if we could find a Playboy, and back then the chicks weren't even shaven. They had big old bushes, so you couldn't see the clit. Nowadays, all the women are shaved, so you guys have it easy. Much easier to find the clit with the shaved area. So, like a lot of people of my generation, and I'm going to assume the young people out there of your generation, the clit is an elusive beast. So, how do we solve this problem, kids? Just like we solve all other problems in life, with education. So you're going to get another anatomy lesson. Alright, here we go. The clit is part of the vulva, which is the external parts of the female genitalia. The clit, that elusive little bean, is at the top of the labia majora, which is above the vaginal opening. So basically, if you can find the silky, wondrous hole we crave so much, just move up a bit until you find the clitoral hood. Now, this can sometimes, especially with women that have smaller clits, be a little difficult. Because make no mistake, there are different size clits, same as there are different size penises. I've had women with very small clits, and they were harder to find. And then I've had women with very big clits, and they were easy to find, and I found it was much easier to stimulate them and get them off. So if you're a woman and you're lucky enough to have a big clit, don't let anyone make fun of you for it, because you are lucky. So, once you find the clitoral hood, feel around with your finger or your tongue, and you will discover a bean or pearl-shaped piece of wondrous, wondrous flesh. There are so many things to be done with the clit. I mean, there's licking, of course, random fingering with or without penetration. I mean, just rubbing 2 fingers in a nice circular motion on the clit will get your woman going and can stimulate her to orgasm. Or you can mix it up and, give her a little bit on the clit and then stick some fingers inside her vagina. Or you can go for full penetration and then either let her stimulate her clit while you're fucking her, or you can try it yourself. I've found that women like to do it themselves a lot because they just know what they're doing better than we do. It's kind of like, the old joke about getting a hand job from a woman. That's something I could do myself, and I know how to do it better than you, sweetheart. So no, I don't really want a hand job. But, usually we'll take one because, we're horny bastards. So many things you can do. All in all, it's just good, clean sport once you know what you're doing. So, do you think you can find it? Because it took me, like I said, well, not 22 years, but, I started giving head when I was around 16, and I didn't really figure out the clitoris until I was 22. So for 7 years, I was just giving terrible head, To be fair, most of the women I was with who were giving me head didn't know what the heck they were doing either. It just all comes with time, practice, and experience. So, once again, if it doesn't work out the greatest the first time, or even the first half dozen times, don't let that get you down. Keep practicing. Trust me, your lover will thank you for it if you keep trying. And unlike other acts, there's really no downside to finding the clit. The only time I've ever had anything like that happen is my high school girlfriend. She claimed that she'd never had an orgasm. And once I figured out what the clit was and how to stimulate it, she quickly started having orgasms. But I told you that to tell you this. When I didn't know how to work the clit properly, I would find it sometimes, and she would tell me to stop because she said it felt too good. And that's because she just had no idea what the clit was and what it was for herself. She was one of those in the minority women that didn't even masturbate. I'm sure she does now. But yeah, a lot of teenage girls, from what I understand, don't masturbate. It's considered, I don't know, gross or slutty or whatever. I don't know that for sure because I'm not a teenage girl, but that's just what I've heard. So, hell, half the time women don't know their bodies any better than we do, until they get the practice and experience. So that's it, folks. That's the lesson on the clitoris. I hope the people that already knew this information will get a laugh out of it, and those of you who didn't will have been informed on how to be a better lover, just how to give a better orgasm, and especially give better head. Because I will give you one more piece of advice. When you're giving head, you cannot go wrong if you find the clit and just start licking and don't stop. You can change it up a little bit, swirl this way, swirl the other way, lick up and down, lick side to side, but do not stop licking that clit, and you will make them come. You can change it up 100 different ways, by sticking your tongue inside of them, licking around the vulva, going down and licking the perineum and even the asshole, whatever you want to do. But I'm telling you, you cannot fail if you just firmly plant that tongue on the clit and lick and lick and lick, and you will give them an orgasm that will make them scream and the neighbors knock on the ceiling with a broomstick. Shut up! It's 3 a.m, shut up! So that's going to be it. That's the end of segment 2. I hope you enjoyed it. Coming up next, segment 3, we're going to listen to some music. Like I said, the band's called The Infinity Process. Its drummer is a friend of mine from way back in the day, and they've got some great music. So I think we're going to listen to, well, I'm going to make it a surprise. I'll let you know right before I play it. But before we go on, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the band. Like I said, it's the Infinity Process, which I think is a pretty cool name. And they have 3 albums. The album we're going to be listening to a song from is called The Unknown. Vocals are Kimberly Tingley, and guitar, bass, and synth is Jason Tingley. And then on drums and percussion is Brent Fell, who's an old friend of mine. So let's get to it, folks. I will see you on the other side. All right. All right. I have decided that we are going to listen to the song Imposter. It's a great song, but mostly I'm playing it because the band thinks that this is one of their better songs on this album, and they want to put a spotlight on it, and I always defer to my artists because there is no higher form of consciousness than art. So who am I to say what to play if they have a particular song in mind? So here it comes. Ready? I am. All right, what'd you think? I liked it. I hope you did. It rocked out. I can't remember if I already addressed this, so I'm just going to do it again. It can't hurt. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, you can look up the Infinity Process on Facebook. I believe they're on Spotify and SoundCloud. As far as I know, they're on all major platforms. They were easy as heck to find on Facebook, so and that has all three of their albums on it. So check them out, give them some love, give them some likes, and enjoy. All right, that's gonna do it. So I will see you next week with more music. Next, we're going to read The Henchman, Chapter 8. I hope you enjoy that too, because T. O'Shea is a heck of an author, if I do say so myself. So, here it comes. The Henchman, Chapter 8. Back at Professor Calamity's lair, Yoshi and I sit down to discuss which direction my career should take next. Yoshi, being the good guerrilla journalist that he is, was with me the night of my fight with Killer Wolf and the rest of the Revengers. Yoshi had given them that moniker in the article he wrote about the incident. It was another exclusive and was a hit with the public. Disjointed cell phone video had been put together from over a dozen people filming in the club, and the footage ran day after day on all the news and entertainment shows. My star was rising. Sure, I was being villainized, but come on, that was to be expected, right? I was, after all, a bad guy, on the side of evil and all that. I'll tell you though, it wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. A surprising number of people were on my side. I had fans, man. Here I was, the guy who had killed one of the world's most beloved superheroes, and people loved me for it. I mean, there was a good portion of the population that wanted me dead and weren't shy about letting me and anyone who would listen know about it in long and very inventive detail. My fan mail outweighed my hate mail, though. The important thing, Yoshi told me, was not the negative or positive aspect of the mail, but the fact that I got so much of it, of any kind. I guess people are just drawn to a winner, whether they're evil or not. Yoshi told me I was hot. Of course, he had hitched his wagon to mine and was kind of a minor celebrity in his own right, being the only reporter with exclusive 24/7 access to me. He hadn't steered me wrong as of yet, though, so I listened when he explained his opinion. He felt I was becoming big enough to strike out on my own. He wanted me to break away from the professor and start my own little supervillain franchise. I was dubious. I had never in my entire career in henching considered or coveted being the boss. To me it seemed like too much work and a lot of hassle. I liked the excitement of the violence and the chance of sudden death that pulling jobs and fighting superheroes offered, without the responsibilities of being in charge. I mean, come on. Just the overhead and logistics alone were a nightmare. Feeding, housing, equipping, and paying your men, maintaining a respectable secret lair that you could be proud to show off to your supervillain friends at evil barbecues, having the hated and passion to get up a good vendetta against a given hero, government, or society in general, it all just seemed exhausting to me. I'd rather do my job, take the risks which seemed my comrades would too, and then kick back with a beer in one hand, a tit in the other, and call it a day. I was a blue-collar evil guy. Yoshi was insistent, though. I was hot right now, he said, so now was the time to act. He told me how fickle the public could be, and that they could easily forget about me unless I made the right moves while I still had moves to make. So I considered it. Why not me? I reasoned. If an old has-been like the professor could make it, I certainly could. I was the one who'd taken out Sunscorch, wasn't I? I was the one who all the talk shows wanted. The professor didn't have to hire a staff just to sort his mail like I did. In fact, it had gotten to the point where his name was only mentioned in reference to mine. I was the star, so why should I work for him? To be honest, he'd started to become sort of an annoyance anyway. He was always harping on me for this or that nowadays. Why hadn't I handled the delivery for the new particle accelerator? Why were the training schedules for the henchmen so late? Why did I miss our last mission? Oh, come on. I mean, that was the day I was doing Oprah. The job was just a little smash and grab at a computer R&D facility in the valley anyway. They didn't need me for that. It was Oprah, for God's sake. I didn't have time for all that petty, everyday nonsense anymore. I had an image to uphold. I was the face for the entire Professor Calamity organization. It was becoming a brand all its own, and I was certainly making us more money than some little smash and grab job. You'd think the prof would be grateful, but all he did was bitch. He told me I was off mission, but what mission did he mean? It was his, not mine. So maybe Yoshi was right. Maybe it was time to go out on my own. So I told Yoshi that we'd start preparations for the big transition after we got back from my next round of the talk show circuit. I had half a dozen interviews set up across the country, as well as speaking gigs at a couple of Comic-Cons, topped off with the big finish of my interview by Barbara Walters herself. Imagine that, small town kid like me being interviewed by Barbara. I hope I don't cry. I started putting out feelers into the Henchman's network to find good talent to work for me, and Yoshi found me an evil realtor to show us some possible secret layers. Most of my attention was focused on the trip, though. The Revengers were out there hunting for me, and I had to be careful. None of this fame and fortune would mean a thing if they caught me unawares. Besides, Silver Smoke would be with them, and wasn't she the ultimate point of all this? I was starting to wonder, though. I was thinking of her less and less these days. I saw her on the news, of course. She and that nitwit, Dr. Quantum, had kept the moon from being knocked from its orbit by an extra-dimensional mutant demigod only last week. She looked stunning as always, but when I saw her punch that Empire State Building-sized monster god back through a rift in time and space, then turn to the camera with that mischievous smile on her face, I just didn't feel that tug in my stomach and loins that I usually did. Could I finally, after all these years, be getting over her? Maybe, I thought, it was because I'd finally found something of my own at long last. I was powerful now. People liked me. Some almost worshipped me, for Pete's sake. Maybe this is what I'd been meant for all along. Why should I let people like Silver Smoke or the Professor keep me down? Why would I let them make me feel bad about myself? I was Commander Ash, damn it. Hero Slayer and media darling. I had my own action figure, video game, and numbers of at least 7 Hollywood starlets. Who needs a goody-goody like Silver Smoke? Let her and her precious Dr. Quantum go off through his Stargate, set up shop in another galaxy, and have a bunch of super babies for all I care. Same for the Professor. He could go with them and be a creepy old uncle or something. To hell with them all. I'm a hit at Comic-Con. People in droves have I Love Commander Ash t-shirts, and Commander Ash masks hide every face. My autograph table has by far the longest line, even though I can't actually sit and sign them myself. Far too dangerous with the Revengers out there. And have one of my bodyguards in costume doing it. Doesn't get me down. My lecture on evil ethics in a modern world, desensitized to violence, gets a standing ovation. Yoshi is there to congratulate me, and of course, a standing ovation. Next, my interview with Miss Walters. I couldn't be happier. Everyone loves me. I have groupies, for God's sake. I'm all set for a big day when the Revengers hit again, on the set of a commercial for my new vodka. I just banged out everything the director wanted on the first take and was ready to fly out to meet with the black market realtor Yoshi had found for me. I was flying high from the success of the past week of the tour and had let my guard down. Idiot. Apparently, so had my men, because the first sign any of us knew of the superhero's arrival was Captain Victory crashing through the wall. Typical of the dumb brute. No style at all. Me and my crew turned to race out the back only to find Dr. Quantum floating serenely in the doorway, orange energy crackling over his perfect form. I didn't remember his stupid red body and orange nimbus as being so bright, but even though you had to squint when you look at him, you could still see all of him. I mean, would it kill the guy to put some pants on? Or even a loincloth or something? I know he's a genius and everything, and that what we see of his form is merely hypothetical quantum energy than real flesh and blood, but Christ on a cracker, I wouldn't want my kids to see that on the 6 o'clock news. I don't know if it was the accident that gave him his powers that did it, or if he was born that way, but the jerkface had a wanger a donkey'd be proud of. Just one more reason to hate him. Killer Wolf swings in behind the captain, probably from one of his hover jets or something, and strikes a pose and sneers at me. He had apparently learned his lesson from our last encounter, as he's decked out with more armor and weapons that I can count. He points something big and nasty looking at me and sneers again. I am not impressed. Silver Smoke simply appears on our flank in her trademark swirl of, you guessed it, Silver Smoke. Her spun silver cloak hides her face in shadows, but I still see her eyes. They're the same as they were, bright and alive with intelligence and power. They have a depth I could lose myself in if I'm not careful. Her bodysuit shows how perfect her form still is, even after all these years. I haven't seen her in the flesh in almost a decade, and it affects me more than I expected. My feeling about her may have started to change recently, but her sudden proximity brings back years of repressed pain and sorrow. I'd always known I hadn't properly faced all of the emotional baggage she'd left me with, that I'd repressed too much, too deeply, but I didn't really know it Not emotionally anyway, until we are face to face again. Know what I mean? It's one thing to know it with your head, another thing altogether to feel it in your heart and your guts. It was like a kick to the emotional nutsack. Ouch. I stood trembling, knees weak, as I stared dumbly at her. My mind was blank, even with my alien neuroprocessors running full out. Me and my men, Yoshi and my entourage of stylists, publicists, etc., were about to go down, hard. I couldn't think of a single thing to save us. They might just be mad enough to kill me and my men, and even the hair and makeup people and my personal trainer would go to a supermax prison just for being in my employ. They were considered agents of evil, and under the revised RICO Act, were guilty of anything I was guilty of. Imagine that. You do a guy's hair or help him lose weight, and suddenly you're responsible if he animates the Statue of Liberty and makes it attack the French just for the ironic laughs he gets out of it. All these new laws don't make any sense to me, but I guess if you have enough lobbyists to buy off politicians, you can get anything put into law. And guess who, just guess who, took the top spot as to having the most lobbyists in Washington representing a single concern or entity? The United Metahumans for Peace Association, otherwise known as the Superheroes Union. Alright, that was Chapter 8 of The Henchman. And that is going to do it for Episode 8 of another Sex, Drugs, and Everything Else. I think the show just keeps getting better and better, but then I might just be getting more arrogant. I don't know. Or maybe just more confident. Or maybe both. I don't know. You tell me. Please leave me a message on Anchor if you're using Anchor, or text me at sexdrugsandeverythingelse@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, I am going to be putting out episode 9 next Wednesday, and we're going to talk about, well, whatever I damn well feel like, because it's my show, and also because I haven't figured it out yet. So anyway, I'm going to end like I usually do. May gratitude, compassion, and empathy brighten all your days. Peace.